listening to Dark Notes podcast. And now we get to the relaxed portion of our show. Our top 3 songs about supernatural sex. And I wanted to do this in our podcast because Shane here is a vinyl collector and has a YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
You're like, no, Lisa. But that is why we're doing it. Okay, that's good.
Okay. My top 3, I don't know why I had to think about this so hard because
it was supposed to be your portion.
Yeah, it should have been. I should have known it, but it took me weeks to come back to 3 songs that I've loved since I was 13 years old.
You're like, oh
yeah. Not only are they 3 supernatural sex songs, they're 3 of my absolute favorite songs of all time.
Period. All right.
The first one,
mm-hmm.
and 2 of the songs are about Glenn Danzig's Hog. So
okay,
there's that, but they're great. The first one is Samhain, Unholy Passion.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is Danzig, Devil's Plaything.
Mm-hmm.
And the third, I don't know why I didn't think of this, Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Very good.
I wasn't too sure. I've always loved that song. I wasn't too sure, so I read up on it. And the guitar player for Blue Oyster Cult said he had wrote it about his relationship and how he felt a love that kind of he thought would transcend life. So yeah, I thought that was fitting. And
that's very cool.
I love the song.
I do
so
too.
Those are mine.
All right. In my turn. That's funny. You read up on the song, so did I. But the first thing that came to mind was Lullaby by The Cure. Oh. But I didn't know if Spider-Man having me for dinner tonight was supposed to be a good thing. And I even read up on it, I'm like, is it supposed to be sexual? And of course, everybody has their theory of what the song is about. You know what I mean? Like,
totally, yeah.
And then The Beast by Concrete Blonde, just because it's about love being kind of this entity that's fucking around with you.
Yeah.
And then Wolf Like Me by TV on the Radio, because the lyrics are so good. And it's werewolves, right?
Awesome. I love those.
All right. And then the next portion of the show, we like to pose a question that we don't tell each other what our answer is until right now. And so this episode's question is
the blind portion.
Yeah. Question is, name a sexually strange event from a book or movie that has kind of stuck with you.
Perfect.
Right?
Yep.
And do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
This story is from a book I read. I first read it when I was like 17. It's called Psychedelic Shamanism by Jim DeCorn. And it's such a good book.
That's pretty intense for 17.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it was literally like my Bible at the time.
Right.
And, I love the format of the book, though. The first half of the book is the author's personal experiences that kind of form his belief system. And this is the third story. It's called A Journey Out of the Body. Okay, I'm going to start.
Okay.
On the night of November 11th, 1968, My wife and I were living in an upstairs flat at 1329 Cole Street in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district. That particular evening, I was reading a book which I had purchased earlier in the day from the outdoor bargain table of a secondhand bookstore. Astral Projection by Oliver Fox was the book. I've since learned that this book is considered a classic of its kind, but then I knew nothing about out-of-body experiences other than that they were strange and interesting. Until that time, I had no real conceptions and few prejudices about the subject one way or the other. Mm-hmm. If anyone were to ask, I'd likely have replied with provisional skepticism that out-of-body experiences, astral projections, were probably some kind of an illusion. The book was fascinating and had a ring of authenticity to it, which impressed me deeply. In fact, I couldn't put it down, and I stayed up hours after my wife had retired so as to finish reading it in one sitting. In the book, Fox describes a method which he used to consciously leave his body. This essentially involves waking oneself up while in the middle of a dream. He calls this the, quote, dream of knowledge, unquote. In order to attain to the dream of knowledge, we must arouse the critical faculty, which seems to be, to a great extent, inoperative in dreams. Before going to sleep, I must impress upon my mind the desirability of not allowing the critical faculty to slumber. It must be kept awake, ready to pounce on any inconsistency in the dream and recognize it as such. The technique sounded simple enough, so as I prepared for bed, I resolved that I would attempt to awaken my consciousness within the first dream I had that very night. Why not? With high hopes, I shut my eyes. I have no idea how long I'd been asleep. Suddenly, I was aware that I was dreaming. There was a small white dog which began spinning like a top. A bizarre enough image, certainly a dream image. Wake up. Bam, I was awake. I was wide awake in bed, no longer dreaming, no longer asleep. Awake and very much still in my body. Well, that didn't work. I'll try again. I dozed off. I saw a huge champagne bottle with a label on it reading air. It began whirling rapidly. Wake up. Bam. I was awake in my room, my wife sleeping beside me, her face strangely flushed, and beside her in bed was me. I was passively floating above my body and looking outward toward the doorway of our bedroom. Standing there was a young woman, perhaps 19 or 20 years old, slightly overweight, Hispanic, with a dreamy Mona Lisa smile on her face. There was something wrong with her. A very pale green aura surrounded her head and shoulders, projecting outward no more than 2 or 3 inches. She was aware of my presence in a vague sort of way, but seemed quite preoccupied with something. She walked into the hallway. I felt myself floating in that direction, a very strange, yet somehow familiar sensation. Although the experience was certainly not identical to normal waking consciousness in terms of being able to differentiate experience, I was as awake as I am now writing these words. I was astounded by what was happening to me and almost overwhelmed with the realization, I'm doing it, I'm projecting. I felt no fear at all. Indeed, the experience was exhilarating, in its way as fully numinous as my Samadhi LSD trip almost 4 years previously. Suddenly, the woman reappeared, and I consciously and deliberately reached out to touch her to see if she was real, even though I understood from my reading of a few hours before that such an attempt at astral contact usually terminates the experience. I compulsively needed to know if she had substance. My hand went through her body as if it were air. A most disquieting sensation, or lack thereof. Bam, an instantaneous change of scene. No longer in our flat. I found myself standing in somebody's upper middle class living room. A large picture window with open drapes overlooked what appeared to be the lights of the South Bay. Later, I deduced that this must have been somewhere down the peninsula, Menlo Park, perhaps. It was no hallucination. I can still see the furniture, the way the room was arranged. There were no lights on, but I could discern everything as clearly as if it were daylight. The room was suffused with a shadowless amber golden glow. In the right foreground stood another young woman, about the same age as the first, late teens, early 20s, petite, pretty, short blonde hair, wearing a shorty nightgown. She was aware of and disconcerted by my presence in her home, but in a distracted, groggy, sleepwalking sort of way. Although in an altered state of consciousness, I was nevertheless, in some sense, fully awake. She, on the other hand, was behaving like someone who was dreaming. Throughout the experience, there was a sharp sense of difference between our respective awarenesses. She turned and moved down the hallway to my right. I willed to follow her. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not the same way one sets out to walk. I floated across the room and down the hall behind her, a sensation like no other. You just, quote, think it, and you're in motion. On the way down the hall, I could see the half-open door of a real, not a dream bathroom. Towels hanging over a shower door, sink, toilet, some items of clothing crumpled on the floor. At the end of the hall was another doorway. Somehow I knew that this was her bedroom. She stopped, turned, saw me floating there, panic on her face. She flashed past me and ran back up the hallway. I certainly meant her no harm. I was high from the experience, intensely curious, and trying to communicate or make some kind of connection. I did a kind of flip in the air and drifted back toward the living room. She stopped at the end table next to the couch and frantically grabbed something from an ashtray. I think it was a cigarette butt. In panic, she tried to force this item into my hand. From my point of view, it was very clearly a dream logic sort of thing for her to do, as if she were trying to make me disappear by forcing me to accept the cigarette butt. As in the previous encounter, I reached out to touch her compulsively, needing to know if she actually had substance. This compulsion was uncontrollable, an indicator that I was not in full command of my experience, though certainly awake and conscious in a way I'd never been before. I gently grasped her shoulder, expecting that everything would disappear, as Fox said it would in his book, but was surprised to find that unlike the first woman, this one was solid. In fact, it was just like touching a real person. I could clearly sense the texture of the nightgown and the warmth of her flesh beneath it. To this point, I was unaware of any intentions on my part other than curiosity. But as soon as we made contact, it instantly became a sexual thing, almost as if we had thrown a switch that energized a magnetic field of some kind. For the merest fraction of a second, she pushed me away, then reversed polarity and just as strongly grasped me to her in a totally desperate embrace. I kissed her neck and was acutely aware of the feeling of my beard against her skin. This was very, very real. She hooked her legs behind mine and kissed my mouth passionately. There was no, quote, penetration in the usual sense, just a sudden, blinding blue-white flash of light uniting us for the briefest of instants, very much like that made by an arc welder. Bam! I was wide awake in bed, my wife asleep beside me. My chest was pounding so violently that I actually feared that I was having a heart attack. I could hardly catch my breath. It felt like I had just crashed into my physical body at the speed of light. I arose and stumbled around the pre-dawn flat, trying to calm down. For some reason, I was frightened. It wasn't the overwhelming fear of my second acid trip, but a kind of anxious disorientation. Here I was, but I'd just been somewhere else. Who was I and what was real?
Wow.
These familiar physical surroundings seemed strangely less authentic than where I'd just been. Somewhere, perhaps only a few miles away, was there a pretty young blonde pacing around her living room trying to integrate what she just could only remember
exactly.
as a very sexy dream. Good grief. I just cheated on my wife. It sounds silly to say it, but I actually felt guilty. I love that. Yeah. Great book. I highly recommend the book.
And at 17, were you trying to do that after you read it?
Well, I did. I did.
Oh,
and
okay.
But I can't remember because, I was 17 and I had read this, and that was the first thing I had read. I think I had ever read about astral projection or dreams. And right after I don't know where else I picked it up, because you got to remember, this is still pre-internet.
Right.
So anything I found out about was books or films or music. And somehow, I can't remember where I read it, but I thought it was this book, and then I went back and reread it, and it wasn't in here, but something told me to try and remember to look at my hands in a dream.
Is that Castaneda?
I guess it was. Yeah.
I think maybe.
The first time I tried it, it worked. And I've never been able to do it since.
Right.
Yeah. I had it was really intense too. It was just like he said, the first time I tried it, I looked at my hands in the dream. I remembered to do it. I looked at my hands and everything got really bright, and I woke up. It was like just, and then the second time I did it, I looked at my hands, the scene changed, and I was in a field, a beautiful blue field. Everything was blue, the sky, the trees, the grass, and it was like a nighttime scene, but illuminated, and a blue beam of light was shooting up into the heavens, and I went up into it, and the higher and the faster I got, the heavier, the more euphoric I felt. And it was insane. I was totally awake.
Right.
It was a total lucid dream. I've never been able to do it since.
Yeah, mine, I've like not looking at my hands, but like, how do I explain it? I don't even know how to explain it. Like being in a dream, and I guess like the champagne or like something sticks out in the dream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something sticks out, and then noticing that or finding that. But what happened to me every time was like once that happened and I was lucid or whatever. And when he talked about how you will yourself to move, when I would do that, I would be so excited. Like, yay! That I would wake up. But, that I'd wake up, and it'd be over. Like,
it's so wild. A really good friend of mine, Summer, who I used to work with at a pizza restaurant like 20 years ago or something. It just came up one day. She revealed to me, she said that happened to her almost every night when she was a kid.
Oh, wow.
She would float around the apartment, and she could go and float into the living room and see her parents watching TV and stuff. And she said it was something she didn't talk about for a long time. She didn't want anybody to know because.
And yeah,
but she said it happened so much that it was almost a nightly thing.
Right. And I can see it. I can see it with kids, because a kid's probably not going to question it. Like, like us, like someone older doing it, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like,
And it
like
was clearly something she wasn't bragging about. She wasn't proud of
right,
it, you know?
right.
Yeah.
And then the only other weird thing I had with an experience like that, a dream, like through a dream, was I had back in the early internet days,
Yeah.
I had a Yahoo group, and it was about stuff like this, and we would like experiment and stuff. And
Yeah.
and so it was very normal for us to get up in the morning and post our dreams, because it was like that kind of a group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had this dream, and it was weird. I was like at a school or something, and going outside, like recess kind of deal or something. And something stuck out to me, like a door where there shouldn't be a door, and I went through it, and I ended up on this beach, and it was like cold, like really freaking cold and whatever. So anyway, one of the guys on the group, I get up, when you go to work or whatever, but you peek on there to see what people are sharing.
Yeah.
And he had a dream on a beach, and he said I walked out of the ocean in his dream. In his dream.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, you're like, hold up, wait a minute. And because it was a tight-knit group, he believed me, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was weird,
Oh,
but
wow.
that's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Now,
great. I wish I could do more. Like, I don't know I don't know why, but in the past few years, I dream a lot, really vivid, heavy dreams almost every night.
right.
But it's so hard to, I have flashes of them throughout the day. I'll remember pieces here and there,
Right.
but, I never wake up and write them down or anything. I usually can't remember them right when I wake up. It's later in the day I start putting
Right.
them together,
Yeah, and writing them down really helps, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a habit. You
that's a
have to
commitment.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, mine, and this is funny because mine is from a book that I read like the late 90s, so I don't even know how old I was or whatever. We're not going there. But the late 90s. And tonight I went to pull it up on my Kindle because I don't have a hard copy anymore, but I do have it on my Kindle, and it would not. My Kindle just spun like a little circle, just spun and spun, and I'm like, so I'm literally just going by what's stuck in my head, which that's fine. But it's The Book of the Beast, which is the second book in the Secret Books of Paradise by Tanith Lee. And Tanith Lee is like an amazing horror writer.
Oh, cool.
And so basically the story is it takes place in like an ancient Paris, or sort of Paris. And this girl, who I don't know her name because I couldn't look it up, but the main character is a young lady who, and it's back when, arranged marriages and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So she is going to be married, and fortunately the person she's going to be married to is handsome and wealthy, and which probably didn't happen that often. But she was really happy about it. Like she was like, all right, right. And so they get married and they have this big wedding, and it comes time to consummate the marriage, the night of the marriage. And so she's not unhappy about it because it's a handsome husband. And he does come to the room, but he lays down and goes to sleep. So she's, it goes through her whole thought process, the story. she's like, well, maybe he's being nice, or, maybe he's, waiting.
Yeah.
And, but it keeps happening. He comes to her room, he goes to sleep.
What,
So then
every night?
yeah.
Yeah.
So then it starts bothering her. Like at first she's, and then it starts bothering her. And then the old ladies start making comments and asking questions. And so she starts kind of snooping around. And he's really nice to her. I mean, he kind of tells her, not to snoop through his stuff and that kind of stuff. He could have beat her or something, but he didn't do anything like that. And then finally, she ends up going to like a witch, a wise woman, and she gets a potion. She gets like a aphrodisiac or something, a potion.
Yeah.
And she slips it in his drink. And shortly thereafter, he says, what have you done? And she's honest and she tells him. And he tells her that, basically that she was silly for thinking that he didn't want her. He was protecting her, and that he actually was taking a sleeping potion every night before he came to her room to protect her. And that's tense, right?
Yeah.
So then, so he's taken this potion or whatever. So then after he tells her that, he gets up and he blows out all the candles in the room. So it's dark.
Oh,
and
shit.
Then right. And then so whatever. And see, I wanted to read the details of like the details, but so I don't know, they end up having sex, and I just know that they end up on the floor, and that it gets really intense, almost bordering on pain, and she's starting to like he's starting to feel different to her, like she feels like sensations, like maybe wings, or you know what I mean? Like, wait a minute, like what is that? And then people bust into the room with torches, and she gets to see what's on top of her, and it's like this bird creature.
Oh,
Man.
God.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a whole Psyche Eros thing.
Yeah.
And it's really intense. And
wow.
And I'm probably really weird, but it's stuck in my head.
Like, well, how does it end? Does she stay married to the bird creature?
Oh, the whole books. It's like 4 books.
Yeah.
And, he's this cursed person, and it kind of goes through, like, eventually.
Yeah.
Things get better. But yeah, she chose the
that's
the
so
cursed
funny.
monster man.
I love it. That's so funny that I just, I've been binge watching the Friday the 13th series.
Yes.
It's so good. And
yes,
of course they borrow from every possible piece of literature for each, but there was one episode, it was really good, that the girl in the show, Roby,
who has really big hair. Like when I started watching it again, I was like, oh yeah. Like
evidently she was like a pop singer, popular in Canada.
Okay.
I had no idea, because I used to wonder, like, why does she only have one name, like a first name?
Right. Like who is she? Right.
Yeah. So she had some kind of following in Canada at the time. But yeah, there's one episode. It was pretty good. She falls madly in love with this guy. And he had a cursed object. Oh man, I'm losing. I can't remember what the object was, but it.
And tell me later, because I want to see it, because I've been watching them too.
I'll have to rewatch.
And everybody, they're on YouTube, luckily for now.
It's worth it's where, yeah, I'll bring it up later. I'll have to rewatch it and give a better explanation.
But the guy she falls in love with is like a beast.
Yeah, he's really, he's a beautiful man, but because he has this cursed object, it makes him beautiful. Really, he's a beast. He's a ugly beast. But he keeps this object with him to make him beautiful, but without it, it shows who he really is, and he's like a freak.
Wow.
And yeah, there's a couple of those episodes. There was a couple more about, I think it's called, the first one's called The Vanity, and where this unattractive high school girl finds this cursed mirror, and if she shines the mirror at a person, whoever the reflection cast upon falls madly in love with her to the point that they would kill for her.
Oh, great.
So these damaged women who've always been shunned just go nuts with power, you know.
Right. Wow.
And leave a trail of destruction in their wake. But it's great. Such a good show. I love it.
And I love it too. And there's a good book I read, a horror novel, like a 70s. I didn't know we were going to talk about mirrors. We'll have to do an episode on that. But but it's like, it has the mirror and the girl sees a woman in the mirror, and it's just a really bizarre horror book. But but I'll save it for later.
Yeah, the mirror is a good topic. We can go
definitely
way into that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Always a pleasure, my friend Lisa.
And like and subscribe, and we'll be back next month. Our email address is darknotespod@gmail.com if you want to send us movies or anything you want us to make an episode around.
Yeah, send rare records too.
There you go. Books, yeah, all of it.
DVDs, Blu-rays. Oh, I almost forgot. Bigfoot porn novels. Are you interested?
Sure.
Okay. This is a piece from a great book called The Redneck Manifesto.
Okay.
By Jim Goad. This is from the chapter Praying Hard. And let me just go right into it.
Okay.
The closest thing the Western Bigfoot Society has to mythological scriptures are two fiction books self-published by WBS members. Children of a Lost Spirit by Nancy Logan and The Bigfoot Bar and Grill by Ray Crow himself. Logan's epic novel seems like about 1,000 pages set in tiny medicine bottle type. Ray's opus is more properly a novella, only 32 typewritten, spiral-bound pages. But both books sketch out remarkably similar stories. Both novels feature Sasquatch clans whose members have kooky names. In Children of a Lost Spirit, the Big Feet call themselves Ba, Ge, Walat, and Halawea. In the Bigfoot Bar and Grill, we get to meet Poos, Plax, Skaz, and Sra. Both Bigfoot families are Sasquatch separatists who warn their members that only trouble could result from interacting with humans. Both books mention lingering karma over the white man's thievery of the land from Native Americans. A wandering, dissatisfied Caucasian housewife is the protagonist.
There you go.
Is the protagonist in both books.
Of course.
Yeah. Children of a Lost Spirit tells the story of Camille, a battered woman who strays too far from a camping trip with friends. The Bigfoot Bar and Grill focuses on Goldie, a bartender who lives in the Sasquatch RV park and can't get her logger ex-husband to cough up his alimony checks. While hiking the Wind River Wilderness area, Goldie encounters more nature than she expected. In both novels, Bigfoot is quite the ladies' man.
Oh.
An indefatigable, God, that word. Indefatigable lover.
Oh.
Musky, hairy, buffed out. An 8-foot Priapus? Is that word?
Priapus. Yeah,
Priapus,
that's...
yeah, okay. There you go. He seems like he'd deliver in the bedroom.
Holy crap! Priapus, you know what that is, right? It's
No.
it's the statue. They have the festivals. It's the statue with the giant penis. Okay, go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is definitely Jim Goad. He's the sort of grocery boy who knows where to dump his package. Big feet, big hands, big body. I mean, do you need cue cards to fill in the rest?
Oh my God.
So this is a section of Children of a Lost Spirit.
All right.
She looked closer at the sitting creature and saw that it was indeed a male. He was by far the largest, and she could not help but see that his manhood matched his body in size. This is a section from the Bigfoot Bar and Grill. But his cock, a large normal man sized at first, but then it swelled up until I hurt inside. I can't imagine anything like it. Both books featured graphic scenes of male Sasquatches raping the white female heroines. The Bigfoot Bar and Grill crams 4 rapes within its slim 32 pages.
Wow.
3 of protagonist Goldie. You'd think she'd stay out of the woods. And the 4th
Right.
of her friend.
Her friend went too.
Yeah, yeah. Here's a section of the Bigfoot Bar and Grill again. Poos, which is the name of the Bigfoot. Poos, I love that. Jammed his organ into her from the rear end. She coughed and choked, then continued screaming and wiggling to get away. The motion excited him all the more, and he hugged her closer, sinking even deeper into her, bigger and bigger, this evil monster that was raping her. 45 minutes later, what the fuck?
This is the best part of the episode.
I know. A whitish puddle lay near her crotch. Her crotch hurt so much that it was a chore to get dressed.
Wow.
Oh, God. The rapist villain Poos squirts his thick genetic material as if it were silly string. He even accidentally discovers how to get a blowjob.
He accidentally discovered.
I don't know. It didn't go into that. And when he isn't raping human women, he's beating his Sasquatch wife and withholding sex from her. What an asshole. In Children of a Lost Spirit, Camille is raped by the evil Oda. He dropped to his knees as he thrust himself deep into her body, and she screamed from the pain. He hit her and dropped her to the snow on top of her as he rammed himself into her violently again and again, and finally spurted his life essence inside her and cried out with
They got poetic at that
I know,
point.
in the 32 pages. Yeah. So Camille is eventually saved from Ada's further sexual predation by a valiant, sensitive Alan Alta / Bill Donahue style Sasquatch named Gay. I wonder if he has glasses. I don't think the younger people would get that reference, but it's perfect for us. He massages her back and playfully engages in snowball fights with her.
Oh, that's sweet.
He eventually impregnates her, consensually, of course.
Of course.
And Camille is certain that the baby will be much more like a nature-loving Bigfoot than a monstrous human. She embraces the teachings of the Sasquatch religion, a matriarchal brand of animism that proposes that humans and Big Feet had once belonged to the same tribe, but suffered a tragic split in which the humans were left physically weaker and morally empty. The titles...
Morally empty.
Yeah. The titles Children of a Lost Spirit are the Sasquatches who eventually found their souls deep in the mountains. Camille learned Sasquatch prayers such as this one for the dead, and I'll end it here. Okay. Great Mother, Spirit of all things, let the chipmunk lead his way until he reaches the great mountain.
All right, amen.
Yeah, great book, great chapter.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Yeah, Jim Goad kind of... the chapter is about kind of rough working class grasp at some kind of religion, you know. Mm-hmm. And he what made it go into the Bigfoot thing was he was living in Portland at the time, and there was a Bigfoot society there at the time that he befriended, and he saw how this was kind of their spirituality, you know.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of filled that need for them.
Right.
But yeah, a great author. Always a great read, Jim Goad.
That is awesome.
Fucked up sense of humor like mine.
I love it. And now the audience has a taste of what to expect. Perfect.
I can't not picture the Bigfoot wearing glasses though after he said Phil Donahue.
Right.
It's got to be a white Sasquatch with glasses.
The white ones.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Cool. What are we doing now?
All right. Do you want me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is weird. Okay. Okay. Good. Yes.
Yeah.
Virginity lost.